got an important battle going on today, I gotta be honest with you. We have different networks converging, competitions brewing. People are, gotta determine who's the best out there. We have the Pseudo network over here, the New Atlantis Science Network. And, it's for all of us Pseuds out there. And then on the other hand, we got these institutions, Thaddeus Russell, Renegade University. I don't know. Whose Kung Fu is the best? We set up this debate with Dr. Thaddeus Russell. You may know him from the Joe Rogan Experience, among other things. He wanted to throw down and have a little debate about Marxism to see whose pedagogical project reigns supreme. And after this, I hope you can make a determination. Should you become a Pseud, or should you become a renegade, or whatever? I think that this will help clear things up a little bit. I mean, you can be the judge of who the victor is and who the loser is. Okay, everybody, I want to thank you for coming back and listening to us for another new episode. It's been a busy week. We have lots of wars and feuding on the timeline. It's very, they can't defeat my Pantagruelianism, so that's okay. We have another show. We have a very special guest, Thaddeus Russell, and I'm very happy to have you here. I've been looking into some of your different things that you've done, your Renegade University and all this stuff. I don't understand what happened with you, and because you're like we're a legit professor at Columbia, I think I read. And then now you have an online kind of substitute university that you're setting up?
Not substitute, alternative. Come on. But yes, I was a professor. Legit is questionable. But I never had tenure. I was never tenure track, but I had full-time positions at several schools. But yes, I started at Columbia, then I taught full-time at Barnard College, which is the women's college there, for 6 years. And then since then, I've been part-time adjunct faculty at about 4 or 5 different schools across the country. New School for Social Research in New York, Occidental College in LA, Willamette University in Oregon. And that was about 25 years. I did got my PhD at Columbia in U.S. history in 2000.
Okay. No, I mean, first of all, I'm not legit. This isn't legit what you're doing right now. So don't worry about that. And
oh yeah, I'm well aware.
Second of all, we are, very anti-university here. I don't believe in institutions whatsoever of, universities. I'm very against the modern university. So I think that we'll have some common points on that.
Good. So the story, I guess, but you were asking me sort of what happened, right?
Yeah. I mean, I can guess. I mean, I destroy credentialed professors all the time on Twitter, and
Good.
It's not. You wouldn't want to be involved with that if you're a smart guy. So I imagine you're a smart guy, and you got out of that.
Well, no, I mean, it's a long story, but in fact, I wrote an article for the Huffington Post 10 years ago about it. So if anyone wants to get that story, they could just look that up. I think it's called Why I Was Fired from Teaching American History.
Badge of honor.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. I'm with you completely on the university. We can talk. I'd love to talk more about that. But yeah, I was at Barnard at the time. I was full-time, but not tenure track. A tenure track position came open. Exactly the position I was teaching which was the head of American Studies there. I was directing their American Studies program as a non-tenure track professor. But anyway, so I had to go through a formal vetting process, which includes what's called the job talk, which is basically just a lecture to the faculty on your current work. So I did that, and half of them hated it, and half of them loved it. And it wasn't technically a firing, but it was a firing because I had been teaching in that position for 5 years at that point. So the reasons for why they had to reject those who hated me vary. There's a few reasons, different reasons. One was just my work, and we can talk about that, the arguments I was making. And that in that case, there's a lot of reasons they don't like my work, or a lot of things that I work on that they don't like. But that was a talk. The job talk I gave was about the civil rights movement and its puritanical elements and its homophobia. And I portrayed Martin Luther King correctly as a puritanical scold Black people, similar to what Obama has done quite often, that I'm sure a lot of your listeners are aware of. A lot of the faculty couldn't handle that. They couldn't handle how I was describing the Black working class as basically, not these good soldiers in the army for civil rights, but is interested in things like freedom and pleasure and fun and not working and rejecting work and rejecting all the trappings of whiteness in American culture.
This sounds like a good thing to me. I mean, I think that, this is how the mafia got started. Is you gotta be smart. You don't want to work. We don't support.
Exactly.
I'm a Marxist. Break out of that stuff. Just like hang around and I don't have a job. This is my job.
Well, that's not Marxist. That's more like anarcho-syndicalist or something.
Oh, now we're getting into it. Now we're getting into it, Dr. Russell. Because you know what?
Or it's lumpen. It's lumpen, isn't it? That's just a lumpen attitude.
No, we're getting into the main idea, the true interpretation of Marx. I'm an orthodox Marxist all the way. People think this is something that's made up, that it's my imagination, but this is what Marx believed.
Okay.
Marx believed that the markets were the ultimate, engine of efficiency and historical problem solving, and that these were the dialectical engines of the future, and that the markets were going to, lead into communism fully, and that it was completely continuous, and that Marx was a classical economist in the tradition of Adam Smith and all these other people. He was the same thing. He considered himself the same, and that's all there is to it. I mean, he knew that the markets would eventually decide on full communism. There's no other interpretation.
That the markets would decide on full communism, meaning that they would choose full communism?
Oh yeah, that's the teleology at work here, the real teleology of history.
So how's that been going?
It's going quite well right now, I think. We're almost there.
Markets are choosing communism?
Oh, we're getting there, baby. I mean, isn't this what we have? This is kind of my point, is that isn't this, what we have now, this whole global managed financial system, I struggle to see how that's different from kind of what 19th century socialists would have wanted. They couldn't even have conceptualized or, dreamed in their wildest visions of what we have today, of these giant public corporations and Vanguard Fund and things like that. That's like totally beyond their understanding. But what you had in the 19th century was like, you had the factory as like your social nucleus, and there was no, giant corporations. And people wanted factories to provide all the schooling and all this social services. I mean, isn't that what we have today? I think that, we have exactly what 19th century socialists wanted.
Well, except for this whole problem of private ownership, which still exists. I certainly agree that it's state-managed capitalism. I call it corporatism, but it's state-managed for sure. And some industries are more managed and regulated than others, but overall, the system, and especially from the top down, is pretty tightly regulated and managed, by the state. But they allow people to, still own their businesses privately and derive profit from them, which is certainly not what 19th century socialists would have wanted, right?
No, Marx didn't care about that at all. He thought that, all that stuff, private property, that was totally irrelevant. He didn't care about that. He just thought it would wither away and die over time. And, that's what's going. Do you really own anything?
Where is this in Marx?
It's all over the place in Marx. I mean, how can you not even have this interpretation of Marx? It's completely correct in my mind. I mean, are you familiar with dialectical materialism?
Yes. I've read all of Marx. I taught Marx. I've read all of his major works.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that. I think that, this is the future that I'm trying to form here, is that I think that Marx and Ron Paul basically were in agreement about everything.
Really? I mean, I have no dog in this fight. I'm not, I don't really care one way or the other. I just think it's interesting. I don't know if you're pulling my chain or not, but I know certainly Marx, I think, didn't he himself talk about how he came out of classical economics? I mean, that he was, I think, Ricardo, the main guy, right?
Yeah, he conceived of himself in that tradition. I mean, it's not like Marx never stepped in and said, okay, we're going to replace capitalism with communism. That's a nonsensical statement. Marx said that, the economic forces that are scientifically being described in classical economics. I'm part of that tradition of scientifically understanding these forces, and that, I have come to the ultimate conclusion about them of what's going to happen. And this is, what is going to end up being the future, is that these forces are leading in this direction.
Yeah, there's the moment. There's a couple things, I guess, in the manifesto, which is like the least important of his work, still, nonetheless.
Oh, definitely.
But nonetheless, there is that great passage about the dynamic power of, he doesn't name it this, but markets, right? And how it's, it is the great radical force of the time and maybe in world history. So that's number one. And then, your teleology, I don't really care actually if it's in Marx or not. I just don't remember seeing it.
No, this is, the whole question of Marx and teleology, is just an interesting one of what he actually, where he gets that. I've heard different versions of that. A lot of people have tried to kind of situate him within a much older kind of Christian tradition of of the millenarian kind of variety.
Yep.
Yeah, and he's tried to linked him back more to, I think, if you go back to the English civil wars and stuff, and you look at like the ranters and stuff, I think that's part of that tradition, and like the anarchic, peasant, religious kind of utopian, communitarian communes of like the Middle Ages and stuff like that. That's all, people have tried to basically interpret Marx in that tradition in a more even theological kind of way in terms of his teleology. But he's fundamentally working in this, traditional kind of debate that you could go back to third critique of, of Kant, and critique of judgment, critique of teleological judgment, and the, Kant's debates with Herder about that, and his articles in the ALZ, his reviews of Herder's, history. So that's kind of the debate that he's caught in. And I don't honestly think that he does have a coherent solution to this, because obviously he's not a metaphysician at all, especially in his later works. But I think there's definitely a teleology in his whole conception of how history works.
Well, sure. The teleology that's famous in Marx is that, of course, feudalism begets capitalism, and capitalism begets socialism, and socialism eventually withers away, and we get communism. But he spells that out so briefly, so schematically, and spends, more than 90% of his work is an analysis of capitalism, and that's where his real genius is, whether you like him or not. And that's all social scientific, and you might even call it scientistic, right? But the teleology, where it pops up, is pretty sparse, and he doesn't really spell it out very clearly. Exactly.
He wasn't very good at that.
Yeah,
with all of his, philosophically, in terms of any metaphysical stuff, he mostly, that's all in his early notebooks and stuff. He doesn't really complete any kind of, real philosophical moves at all, and just kind of glances over everything, and it's okay, I solved Fichte, I solved the problem of striving or whatever, and he just moves on.
Well, yeah, he says there's going to be overproduction and immiseration of the working class. Well, neither of those have happened, so that's a problem.
And I think that the weakest, Marx is capital, obviously. All of his predictions have actually not even come true.
Right.
He's just wrong on so many counts in that book. I'm an early Marxist.
Okay.
That's the true Marx right there. I don't really like the later Marx, the Marx of Capital. And also his journalistic writings, and more in that kind of vein, are much better than his full scale attempts at economic analysis.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so where do we go from?
No, I'm just here for it, man. I love talking about this kind of stuff.
So I'll tell you. You want to hear my history with Marx and Marxism?
Yeah, you're more of in the academic setting, teaching this in school, and I don't even know what that's like. Because that's so a hard topic for people to get into. I feel like when you get taught this in school, in college, it's people get a bullshit version of it.
No. So I have a couple of very different connections to Marx and Marxism. So I was born a Marxist. My parents were Trotskyists in the 1960s when I was born. They were members of what is now the International Socialist Organization, the ISO, right? They were in the IS at the time. So I was around Marxism literally from birth all the way through adolescence. And I was living in Berkeley at the time in the 60s and 70s and 80s. So, of course, every other person was a Marxist of some sort or another. So it was in the air, and that was all non-academic exposure to it. I mean, it was more just going to the meetings with the comrades and hearing them talk and hearing my parents talk about it. So it's like being born into a church, right? You just assume that this is all correct and this is what you should do and this is how you should think. And so I went to college with the express mission of finding out what the fuck Marxism and socialism was, because I didn't really know. I had just been hearing it. And that's what I did, and I devoted myself to it. So for all the way through college, I just read Marx, I read philosophy, I read history, and I just was training myself to be a good socialist Marxist, which I did. I founded a chapter of DSA at my college, which I am not proud of at all. And I wasn't even proud of it then, and I'm certainly not proud of it now, but I did.
Especially as a Marxist, that's not Marxism.
Oh yeah, no. I mean,
we side with the Third International here with Stalin, is that we are going to destroy the democratic socialists because they're gradualists and they're revisionists. So
so you're explicitly a Stalinist?
How could you not be? I mean, that's if you're
wow.
If you're a Marxist, how can you not end up in that way?
Impressive.
Have you read Main Currents of Marxism?
What do you mean?
The Kolakowski.
Oh yeah, Leszek Kolakowski. Yeah, I read that in undergraduate actually.
Yeah, no, I mean but that isn't that his argument in that book too? Is that
I don't remember. It's been so long. I don't remember. I read that book in the 80s when it came out, and everybody was mad at him. That's all I knew, is that all the Marxists were mad at him. Oh, actually, I do remember. Like, it was. I mean, he was basically attacking the whole tradition of Marxism. But I guess that's right. He says he's right. He says it ends up in totalitarianism, but that's not a positive thing for him. But it sounds like it is for you.
Well, no, I mean, he is obviously not really giving a history of, physical communism, like movements and anything. Like, he's mostly just dealing with theory and the history of Marxist theory. And so his main point is like, in how do you, connect Stalinism to Marxism, right? Because everybody is always doing that, making that connection, and people have various ways of projecting that or saying that, this isn't real Marxism. I'm sure you've heard that kind of stuff before. So that's his whole point of the whole book, is to actually make that argument historically, to go through all of the major Marxist theorists of, every variety, every international, and then to ultimately say that Lukács is the, one person who interpreted Marx most correctly and most completed his thought in his own writings. And then that's how he pins it to Stalinism, and he says that this is the real version of Marx, and this is Stalinism. So that's the argument of the book. Okay,
and that's your argument too.
It sounds, I find that persuasive. I actually quite like him. He's actually a very amazing literary critic and theorist. That's actually the dimension that I like him the most for. I don't know if you've read any of that stuff.
You're talking about Kolakowski still?
No, about like theory of the novel, or like.
Right, but who are you talking about? Which author?
Lukács. His theory of the novel.
Yeah. Lukács. No, I have not read a lot of Lukács. But wait, I want to get back to Stalinism and this connection to Marxism. And so you see it as the inevitable culmination of Marxist theory?
No, I definitely would agree with that.
Okay,
that it is, yes.
And you see that, and you see Stalinism as a good thing.
I don't see how you could not see it as a good thing. I mean, Stalin is a hero.
Wow, this is fantastic. Okay, I haven't talked to a true blue, true red Stalinist.
I told you, I'm an orthodox, hardcore Marxist here.
Well, wait. So were my parents, and they hated Stalinism.
Well, they weren't real. They weren't really Marxists. I mean, I'm not insulting your credibility here as a Marxist. Don't get me wrong, man.
Well, I don't care.
I know what you've been through, but really, all that DSA stuff. That's, as I said,
Oh yeah, it's social democratic bullshit. I know.
It's not Marxism at all. It's gradualism. It's, Stalin sent terrorists. The Third International sent terrorists to go to Germany and destroy the Social Democrats. They were the main,
Yeah.
What can you say?
Oh, sure.
They were the real enemy.
Sure.
And, the theory of social fascism, I'm sure you're aware.
Yeah, totally. So tell me about Stalinism and why you like it.
Well, have you read God? Oh, I'm getting a little bit of feedback on your end. Are you wearing headphones?
No, they weren't working. So I need to.
Oh, that would be best because we're gonna have to edit out my voice from all of your track, which is just, it's not a huge deal. It's just a bit of work, and then I'm just hearing a bit of feedback. So
I'm sorry, I couldn't. I tried to get my. But you like work because you're Stalinist. They love work.
What's that?
The Stalinists love work. That should be fun.
Oh yeah, we'll get back into it in 1 second. I'm gonna edit this part out, obviously, so I don't want to get back into the discussion right.
Oh, might be working now.
Oh, is it working now?
Now I'm hearing you through my headphones. Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Wasn't working before, but now it is.
Oh, I'm glad.
Cool.
That's better. It's a little bit less work to cut it out, but we're just I'll edit all that out. So
okay, great.
But I was just gonna say, you were asking about just to like what is good about Stalinism or whatever. So I'll just pick up there. Okay.
Right on. Cool.
So you in terms of what is good about my interpretation of Stalinism, why it's good, is that have you read God, Emperor of Dune? I'm going to ask you.
No.
This is an important Stalinist work.
No.
It's actually, I think, a fundamental key text in Stalinism.
Okay.
Are you aware of the Dune series, Frank Herbert?
Yes.
Okay. So the whole plot of the overall arc here is that, you have Duke Leto II, who turns himself into a giant worm who rules the universe for 10,000 years, and he has a specific plan called the Golden Path that he follows, and that Golden Path is designed to ensure that humanity survives into the future, into the distant future, until the end of the cosmos. And he has the ability to see the future, and he has found the one path through all historical contingency in order to ensure the survival and destiny of the human race, right?
Okay.
This is Stalin. This, Frank Herbert was clearly, it's Duke Leto II, God Emperor of the Universe, is Stalin. And that's what the Soviet Union, that's the function that it served, is that this was the Golden Path. This was, humanity being protected from all these degradations, because I don't think it seemed like you agreed at the beginning that we have managerial corporatism is the word that I often hear. So you agree that I would say is it's gradualism, it's reform liberalism, is that that's what all this socialism really is we don't have any capitalism going on. So the purpose of the Stalinist project, that's his golden path, is that he was saving his people from these ravages, from these processes. And, it's protected them through modernity. It ushered them through the safe golden path.
Wow. Okay. So, do we talk about the gulags, or do we talk about freedom of expression? Do we talk about the show trials? How do you figure that in?
So with the gulags, you don't think that criminals should go to jail?
Okay. Well, so those were all criminals?
Well, if you attack the ideology of the party, isn't that criminal?
Sure. According to that state, absolutely, yes.
Well, isn't that always the case? How can you're by your ideological attacks, isn't that a psychic bombardment, a psychic barrage of attacks on the soul of the state and the soul of the people? We're not even talking about, that's the ultimate crime right there. That's even worse than any, larceny or petty larceny, anything like that. That's what you should obviously go to jail for. If you are being led by the God Emperor of the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin, and you're launching psychic attacks against the spirit of the Soviet Union, the spirit of this, grand vision that's holding it all together, that's saving your entire nation from the ravages of social fascism and gradualism and revisionism. That seems like a pretty serious crime to me.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see. So, What do you make of the fact that he banned dancing and jazz music and rock and roll?
I would do the same thing.
Okay.
Why would you ever allow that? If I could do that right now, I'd ban it.
All right. Good to know. I mean, yeah. Hey, I love it when people are just, upfront and explicit about their politics and what they stand for and their values. So, why would you? Why?
Tell me this. I mean, do you support rock and roll? Is that something that you like?
Yeah. Why?
Why? Why is that? So you basically, I don't know if you've read your Adorno or anything, but I mean, how can you participate in this? How can you participate in this entire system here?
Oh wow!
Well, it's degrading. It's degrading the human soul. Have you read Nietzsche? I mean, isn't this what he's saying too? Is that the more that people learn to read and write, the more that people write, is that that degrades thought, that dilutes thinking in general. And isn't that the same thing with this mass culture? How can you support that?
I don't think Nietzsche.
I mean, aren't you just destroying human thought?
I don't think
basically, essentially, by doing this, you're destroying beauty. You're diluting beauty. You're destroying the human soul. You go to the gulag.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, first of all, I don't think Nietzsche was talking about rock and roll or mass culture in the 19th century.
Why not? I think that he was. Absolutely. He was a perceptive, visionary man.
But I know Adorno.
And they had mass culture though in the 19th century. Surely mass culture developed in the 18th century. Mass culture developed, at Grub Street in London.
Sure. Yeah, but of a different sort. But Adorno.
No, it's continuous, not different in kind, different in degree, perhaps.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to argue that point. But Adorno certainly was a direct, explicit critic, not of rock and roll, but of jazz and of mass culture, popular culture in the post-war period. Yeah. And so,
Well, let's get into the aesthetics of this. I mean, make the aesthetic defense of this, mass culture which pollutes the human soul.
An aesthetic defense is absurd and impossible. I just like it. And here's the problem.
That's not scientific.
Oh, I know.
Have you read Schiller's aesthetic education of man? It doesn't matter if you like it. Beauty is an objective quality of the things that, possess them. If you believe otherwise,
most certainly not scientific.
Then you're a subjective nihilist.
That's right. Well,
so basically, you're just admitting that you're a nihilist right now. Is that right?
So no, I just want to say, yeah, I have an irrational taste for rock and roll and other things like it. Things much worse by your lights, I would imagine. So what are you going to do with me?
Go to the gulag.
And people like, yeah, okay, all right, cool. I mean, that's what I like to do. I mean, that's what the conversation has to start with. Like we can be friends now, but if you get your revolution, you're going to put me in a prison. Correct?
I mean, you won't even be around for that. I mean, we're going to alter human... I mean, obviously, you said that you were familiar with dialectical materialism. Is that right?
Yes.
As well, then you know that that's what the real revolution is. Revolution doesn't even have to be a physical event. It's not a change in the physical structure of society. Is that the revolution is the revolution of consciousness? Isn't that right? Is that we are trapped in the psychology of modernity? Is that this is what the idea, the metaphor of the panopticon is? But that goes all the way back. I mean, you said that you knew about Grub Street and mass culture. Are you familiar with Joseph Addison's The Spectator? And the same thing. Do you know that one? Yeah, I like all of that stuff. I like the culture of the streets. I like the culture of the lumpen proletariat. I enjoy it. What does it have to do with we're talking about the nature of intersubjectivity under modernity. It has nothing to do with poor people on the streets and their brusking or whatever. We're talking about these sorts of metaphors, basically as the description of intersubjectivity that you would find in Fichte. Okay, so what's the problem you're pointing to? I'm just pointing out that's what we're dealing with here, is that the intersubjectivity of modernity, how it, a consciousness is actually structured in the modern age, that's what we're really having a revolution against. That's what dialectical materialism is actually about. What has happened to human consciousness in the modern age that you just liked? Well, human consciousness has been developing continuously since the dawn of human history, obviously. Right. But obviously the history of the modernity in the 17th and 18th centuries, right? Mm-hmm. That's the, crisis of European consciousness. I don't know if have you read, Paul Hazard? No. Crisis of the European Mind? No. Classic work on Enlightenment consciousness and rationalism. Are you... Well, the argument here is that So basically, rationalism develops during this time. Basically, the whole history of classical metaphysics basically can be described as reason coming into self-awareness. And within the philosophical works in this tradition is that those works actually represent reason developing into self-awareness. That's the history of modern consciousness, right? Yeah. So that's the change that's happening. Is that are you familiar with like this idea? So you have the faculties of the human mind, correct? And in primordial times, is that all the faculties of the mind, all the powers of the soul are indistinguishable from one another. They're, intermixed. They're not separated. That was the original state of the human mind. As history has gone on, those faculties have developed, distinguished from one another. That's the history of all of human, rational psychology. From the beginning of time until now, it's a process that's always going on. So that was the major change that happened, beginning in the 17th century. Is that the power of reason developed out and became self-aware and, took control. Do you disagree with that?
Oh, you said it's always been moving towards self-awareness. And how do you know it's been moving towards self-awareness? How do you know that we're more aware of ourselves than before?
This has nothing to do with personal self-awareness. I'm talking about the general faculty of reason in, a pure philosophical sense. I mean, it came into self-awareness. How do you
know that it's gone in any particular direction? I mean, I take it you mean it's gone in the direction toward objective truth and reality, right? We've gotten closer and closer to...
No, it's reason. This is what, the critique of pure reason is, right? Isn't that what the whole point of the book is? Isn't that what the argument of the book is?
Maybe. I don't know what your interpretation
is. My interpretation is that this book is about reason criticizing itself and becoming, self-critical of its own faculty and its own powers and limitations, right?
Yes. Okay, yes. I got that, yeah.
So that's the history of classical metaphysics from Descartes to Kant, is that's the transformation that happened in consciousness.
Okay, and how does this tie into Stalinism?
Well, that ties into the topic that we were just talking about, dialectical materialism, right?
Maybe.
Is that no, it does, because why? Have you been following? Is that we're revolting against modern consciousness.
Okay.
This is modern consciousness, is that there's limitations baked in to, the intersubjectivity of modernity and how we interrelate with one another and how subjectivity is mitigated and what the realm of objectivity is and how we connect our different minds together. I mean, how is it possible for a thought from your mind to get into my mind? That's what I would ask you. Is that's the problem of intersubjectivity, right?
Okay. That's what you mean when you say intersubjectivity.
Yes. I mean, I'm talking about how subjects relate to one another, intersubjectivity.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. And what is what is the problem here in the modern age with intersubjectivity? Why is intersubjectivity?
Well, do you think that modernity is like good?
That's a different question. Can you answer my question?
Well, no, it's a deeply related question. Do you think it's good? Is
it good? I mean, no. I mean, I'm more of a postmodernist, so I have lots.
Okay, I'm a postmodernist too.
I have more critiques. I have more criticisms of modernity than I have plaudits for it. But I still wonder.
What are the critiques?
I'm still wondering what the crisis of intersubjectivity is. Like, what is the problem that you're trying to address? Do you think Stalinism would address?
Do you know the general criticism of rationalism? Are you familiar with Jacobi or anything like that?
There are many.
Well, I think there's one main one that was very critical, especially, I mean, when we're talking about the very early beginning of postmodernism obviously begins in the late 18th century.
What?
And
wait, what?
Yeah.
With who?
Why would you disagree with that?
Sure. I mean, I don't know I don't know what you're talking about. Who are you talking?
I'm talking about Georg Hamann.
Oh, I don't know who this is.
He is I can tell you the story. I mean, he was, Kant's rival. He was,
okay. Got it.
there's obviously quite a lot to it, but just to summarize, is that the argument here is that rationalism ultimately and inevitably declines and collapses into subjectivism and nihilism.
Okay, that's the move I don't understand. I'm not opposed.
And why?
I just don't get it. I don't understand the argument. Why is that inevitable? Why does rationalism inevitably
I think
decline?
we got a Spinozist here. We got a Spinozist here, guys. Is that right?
No.
Did I just encounter a secret Spinozist?
I've never read Spinoza.
Oh, that's what they all say.
Yeah. No, I'm lost, man. You got to help me out here.
Okay, I mean, we're obviously dealing with the problem of grounding. We're talking about the problem of grounding of reason, right? I mean, isn't that, if you're dealing with reason in its own sphere, okay, maybe we should go back to like base one. And like, what is rationalism? I mean, what is your interpretation of what rationalism is?
Sure. I mean, I could talk about it in various ways, but I mean, one way I would talk about it is sort of the reduction of human or all experience to what can be quantified and measured.
Okay. Are you familiar with Kant's refutation of idealism? Because that's the key point
Go for it. Let me
of
know.
rationalism.
Let me hear it.
So, but do you know, like anything, would you characterize rationalism as idealism? Do you understand that connection, or?
No. Maybe. I don't know. If I hear an argument, I might be very sympathetic to it, actually. That's just a new thing. I haven't heard that, but I'm interested. How are they?
Well, this is the argument. Do you know?
I mean, it's a form of, well, hang on. So I do describe it as a form of religious belief, rationalism, right? There's a faith in the existence of objective reality outside of human consciousness, which can never be proven or disproven. So therefore, it's an article of faith. So I find it to be a system of religious thinking.
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I mean, there's maybe a point you can get to later talking about maybe and connecting it to the general argument. But basically, idealism in a philosophical sense is this idea that the human mind can know everything. I mean, how would you define metaphysics in general? Wait. I'm questioning.
Rationalism or idealism? I think you just misspoke. You mean
rationalism, and rationalism is idealism.
Okay, so rationalism is, how is it idealism for you?
Okay, well, it's not idealism for me, it's idealism for Kant, and this is what the refutation of idealism is.
Okay.
And the critique of pure reason. This is his argument.
Okay.
So that rationalism is idealism. Kant distinguishes three different forms of idealism, right? He distinguishes rationalism as what he calls dogmatic idealism. This denies the existence of a world apart from human thought, right?
Right.
And then he has problematic idealism, which is agnostic about the existence of an exterior reality.
That's right.
His purpose in the refutation of idealism is to forward his form of idealism as this superior solution to this problem, which is what transcendental idealism is, or as he would later come to prefer to call it, skeptical idealism, right?
Okay.
So that's what rationalism is. It's dogmatic idealism. When you're saying you're a Spinozist, right? You were just admitting that you were a Spinozist, right?
No, I wasn't. I said I'd never read him.
Okay, it sounds like what a Spinozist would say. But so
I don't even know what a Spinozist would say, so I can't be one.
Okay, I mean, this seems like you're in dangerous territory now. We might have to get you canceled from Renegade University because this is what happened with Fichte. You know, he got drummed out of the University of Vienna, right?
Why's that?
For Spinozism.
I see.
So I'm watching you, buddy, okay?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I am dangerous.
But we're dealing with this ideal. We're dealing with, rationalism and as dogmatic idealism, right? Rationalism is
I like
the
that.
metaphysical position that, in terms of metaphysics, is that you're using these pure reason to determine investigate the objects of metaphysical, speculation, right?
Yes. Yes.
And what are those objects? If you could identify, I think there are 4 different metaphysics that we could talk about traditionally. Would you agree with that? Traditional system of metaphysics and the branches of it?
That there are 4 of them.
Yes.
I don't know. Actually, I'm not a philosophy PhD. I'm a history PhD. I do philosophy as a sidelight. So why don't you tell me what the 4 branches are?
Okay, there's general metaphysics, which is ontology, and then there are special metaphysics, which consists of rational psychology, rational theology, and cosmology. Correct?
Yep.
This is what metaphysics was as a scientific discipline during this era that we're talking about, right?
Sure.
So these are what the objects of investigation of metaphysics as a science are, correct?
Sure, yes.
No, I mean, I don't think it's disputable. I think this is just definition of metaphysics. So, so that's what we're trying to investigate. And in this classical metaphysical tradition prior to Kant, is that we believed that reason could find out things about these things, these objects. One of them being God in terms of rational theology, one of them being the soul in terms of rational psychology, correct?
Yep.
And that we could use deductive, syllogistic reasoning to actually gain knowledge about, positive knowledge about these objects.
Yes.
That's dogmatic idealism.
Yes.
How can you know about those things? You're reducing them all to the human mind. Basically, you're putting everything within the human mind and denying the existence of the outside world and saying that basically thought determines information, knowledge about these objects, right?
Oh.
So this is the problem with when we talk about modern consciousness. This is what we're getting at here. So to go back to what we were originally talking about, I wanted to explain like Jacobi to you, right? And his argument is with these things is that this is the problem of, metaphysical solutions to things, is that we're trapped in a circle, right, of trying to ground our rationalism, is that we try to find some ground for it, and we're caught in a loop of circular reasoning because, the conditions, the final conditions and the final causes and these things, they're not in the, we can't get at them in the realm of our thought using reason. They're outside of it, right? So ultimately, reason, which is a subjective faculty, is caught in this loop of trying to ground itself and gets further and further collapsed like a black hole into its own self.
Yeah, which is a postmodern critique.
Oh, well, that's exactly what I'm saying, is that that's Jacobi, postmodernism, that begins in the late 18th century.
Oh, okay. I'll take your word for it. That's great to know.
Okay. Well, I mean, what would do you not see that as the problem of modernity? I mean, that's what we were originally talking about, is I want you to now make a defense of modernity, or say your criticisms of, I don't know exactly what your position is.
I don't know. I still don't know what your position is.
I explained the whole criticism of modern consciousness to you.
Yeah, I had a hard time following some of it. I guess I don't see the. Can you just state what the problem?
You mean you want me to break it all down for you into a single sentence of all this, history, philosophy, 100 years of classical metaphysics and the criticisms of it into a single sentence?
That's what teaching is. You got to do that sometimes. You have to write a long book.
Okay.
Sometimes you have to write a pamphlet, right?
How much do you charge for Renegade University?
Wow, dude.
Well, I'm just wondering.
Why is that?
Because I want to charge you that.
Why is that? Oh, because you're teaching me.
Because I'm teaching you, yeah.
Okay.
Can we arrange that? Okay, it's actually level one, $49 a year. So I don't know. You can get me that after the show if you want.
Sure. Well, I still haven't been taught much, so I'm waiting for that. I just want to know what bothers you about this. It
doesn't bother me. This is the problem of the whole modern world, ultimately, right? Is that it's a problem of alienation. I mean, we can talk about. Are you familiar with sentimentalism?
Yeah, very much.
In what regard?
Hallmark cards.
Okay. No, I mean sentimentalism as in terms of like aesthetics of, late Enlightenment society.
Maybe.
And
You need to be specific.
I mean, are you familiar with the English novel?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, I'm aware of it.
Well, I mean, have you? No, I mean, I'm asking just for Vicar of Wakefield, Oliver Goldsmith.
You were using a lot of academic shorthand, right? And so a lot of that shorthand has been used in different ways by different people. So I don't know what you mean by your.
I'm using it. I mean, I assume that we're talking between academics. I have a PhD as well.
Yeah, I know, and I think it's probably a different field.
We're talking for an academic audience of all my fellow pseudo-intellectuals.
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, so yeah, the sentimental.
So I mean, you don't have to worry about it. I mean, don't assume that they're stupid or anything. Don't talk down to them. I mean, I only charge $5 a month for this. So.
Okay. So the sentimentalism exemplified in the English novel. Yes, I'm aware of that. And that's
okay.
And what about
have
that?
you? I mean, I'm a big fan of that. Have you read like any of those books in particular?
Gosh, not in a long time. My mother's a big fan though. But what about them?
Well, this is the aesthetic of obviously late Enlightenment society within Europe, especially within England, and this is definitely very present on the continent in a lot of different works of Rousseau would sometimes interpreted as an example of that. But the idea with sentimentalism is that this is obviously the collapse of rationalism, right? I mean, have you read Schiller's on naive and sentimental poetry? I mean, that's
No.
That's the way that I'm using the term sentimental here, is in Schiller's sense.
No, I haven't read that.
Okay, so that is basically a literary criticism of the different phases and genres that a type of literature goes through, right? So in his conception is that you start at the naive. And with that, he makes connections to more of the encyclopedic novel of Don Quixote, Cervantes, or Gil Blas. Are you familiar with Gil Blas?
No.
Oh, that's a great novel. You should read that. But novels like that, where it's the hero, it's going through a whole encyclopedic portrait of all of civilization that they live in, going to different occupations, different classes. It's a very kind of linear encyclopedic portrait of a society, right? And that's where the novel starts out, is that the whole point. And this is why earlier, I mean, I was asking if you read Theory of the Novel, right? As a Marxist.
Uh-huh.
I think he makes a lot of similar points. I mean, he was obviously, very influenced by exactly what I'm talking about right now. So I don't remember if you read that, but the whole point of these arguments, or Schiller's argument here, is that in these earlier naive novels, is that the spirit of society is immanent. Is that people don't feel alienated from it. It seems like that the world is intact, that the world is whole, that they live in a society where it's permeated by the spirit of society. Everybody feels it. Everybody partakes in it. It's that's where we're starting off on the naive side. So in an essay like Naive and Sentimental Poetry, Schiller is moving through the history of the modern novel, and he is talking about the development of sentimentality. And this is exactly connected to everything we were just talking about in terms of the development of reason, right? Because what his examples of this are novels like Defoe, right? Confessions, memoirs. They're a single perspective, right? There's no narrator outside. They're written first person. There are people telling their life stories from their own perspective. And this is exactly what I'm talking about in terms of the critique of rationalism. Can you make that connection there, right?
Possibly.
Is that what I was just saying about the two, is that this is a manifestation, representation of that. Is that, we're dealing with a problem of the human mind here, just in the sense of we're just talking about with metaphysics. Is that we have this rationalism of being trapped inside of your own mind, denying the existence of an external reality. And this is exactly what's going on in the sentimental novel, Sorrows of Young Werther. That's his problem. That's where alienation comes from, because his ability for subjective rational reflection is distancing himself from the sense of immanence of the totalizing spirit of the society in which he lives. He's becoming alienated from it because of the development of his own criticism, his development of his own rational ability. That's the story of the modern world in a nutshell, really.
Okay. Okay. So, right. I think I'm catching the drift here. So you see a move toward individualism, right? That's part of it. You see the rise of the memoir here, right? The first person narratives rather than a narrator, right? And you say that you call that alienation from the immanent spirit of the what do you call it? Totalizing society. Am I right? Did I get that right?
I mean, I wouldn't describe it as individualism in a sense. I mean, it's way more than that. If you read Pamela or Clarissa.
But it's the moving of the individual away from this immanent spirit of totalizing society, right?
It's more than that. It's way more than that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, is this? So that sounds. It is certainly part of the Marxist tradition, what you're saying here, but its origin for me is in Rousseau. Am I right?
I mean, you could talk about Rousseau as being aware of this problem.
Yes, well, he kind of invented the problem.
I mean, this is exactly have you read?
He invented the problem.
Julie. Have you read Julie?
No.
Okay, that's the novel that
I know
we should be talking about right here. This is important because this is based on, obviously, what I just was asking is this is a copy of Richardson, right?
Uh-huh.
Have you read like Pamela or Clarissa or anything like that? Because this is all connected into exactly what I'm saying is that this, something like Richardson, that's the height of the sentimental novel. That's the problem of that novel is that you have four characters writing letters to one another, trying to determine one another's minds. So it's not really individualism. It's that there's no mitigative narrative reality. It's just four minds in a void trying to violently rape one another mentally to psychically determine the contents of each other's thoughts. And this gets to the ultimate problem of rationalism, which is there any such thing as other minds? Do other minds outside of my own exist? Or am I like, the God who uses my reason to determine everything around me and subjugate all other minds who are just extensions of myself? So I don't know if you could describe that as individualism per se in any, conventional sense.
Okay. But again, it's this. I want to get back to this thing you said about the immanent spirit of the totalizing society, right? And that's what you want people to move toward that rather than away from that.
I want, isn't that the problem of modernity? Don't you want to restore that sense? And wouldn't that solve a lot of the sense of, fracture within our world? And wouldn't that consolidate people's...
Got it. Okay, good. Now at least I know what you're talking about. Okay.
I'm glad I could bring you up to speed. I'm going to charge you for the level 2 Get Interactive.
Yeah, you should.
$249 yearly. So I will, you can PayPal me that or whatever. We'll work it out after.
Okay, yeah. No, I don't. I think we're doing better than we ever have, by far.
In what sense?
Any sense, as a species.
Say a sense. I mean, I was just talking to answer your questions. I have a question, so
I mean, it's probably
go wild.
It's probably stuff you're not.
Tell me what is good.
It's probably stuff you're not interested in, but like material conditions of everyone, and particularly of the working class, are better than ever by far. It's indisputable.
So we're more enslaved by things. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what I just said. We have now the ability to communicate to anyone, anywhere in the world, like we are doing right now, and anyone can do that basically for free. That seems pretty cool to me, and a great improvement on what was before. The ability of everyone to access any idea on the planet at a moment's notice. We have that now. We didn't have that before. If that's not
but nobody uses that, obviously. So
what do you mean? We're doing it right now, and that's how you learned all the things you learned, all the weird things you learned.
I mean,
weird things
I did. I mean, I assume that they taught people that in universities, graduate schools, and stuff like that.
So you weren't trained in a PhD program, or were you?
I mean, I have a PhD. I didn't go to grad school.
Where's the PhD from?
I took it from somebody else.
Like who? I don't care. I'm not a credentialist at all. I'm an anti-credentialist. Don't worry. I'm just curious.
No, I don't even remember. Just some loser PhD who's trying to debate me or something. I do it all the time. I have a bunch of them. Actually, I have a JD too. So
they have
I expropriated it like Stalin.
They have surplus.
This is why I'm a Stalinist. I expropriated the PhDs myself using my rhetorical force. So I'm going to get yours, I think. Another one for the pile.
Yeah. it's all those surplus PhDs you're expropriating, right?
Yeah, I'm using them for the good of the Pseudodoxology network and the New Atlantis Science Network, and we're advancing the cause of humanity here. But I mean, isn't this stuff you're saying about the Enlightenment? That's like Steven Pinker stuff, isn't that like Enlightenment now, the case for reason, science, humanism, and progress?
Oh yeah, but I hate Pinker. I mean, part of it is part of it. I agree. Part of it, I agree with one small part of his stuff, but most of it I can't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of material conditions, it's just indisputable. And Pinker's not the only person who's been saying this. He just picked that up. No, he also has ridiculous things to say, like, you know, there's been a decline in violence with modernity, when in fact the 20th century was by far the bloodiest century in human history, and there's no doubt about that, I don't think. And so he's kind of like this, you know, he has this Whiggish interpretation of history that's always getting better and better and better, and just, you know, buckle in. And I think overall, yes, I'm glad that I live now as opposed to in the 19th century, but it's also true.
Why?
Oh, the reasons I just laid out. That I love using Twitter.
Because you have what? Like you have a washing machine or whatever?
Yeah, and Twitter and a podcast. And I get to talk to interesting people like you.
So that you would, you know, rather, you know, you want to have a washing machine but live in the decay of modernity and post-capitalism?
A cave?
Decay.
Oh, decay. It doesn't look decaying to me. It looks thriving to me. Isn't
like unemployment right now 20%?
Oh, you mean if you're talking about the last 4 weeks? Yes.
Well, I'm talking about. I mean, isn't this built into the system that we have now? It has nothing to do with coronavirus, as far as I know. It's, you know, we live in an extremely fragile economy that was doomed to do this anyway. It was going to collapse even without coronavirus. It was inevitable. It was coming. I mean, everyone saw it already. I mean, we knew that what Trump was doing with his economic program.
Well, that's where you and Ron Paul agree. That's a lot of libertarians talk.
And this is why Ron Paul is a Marxist. I'm taking him away from you libertarians.
I'm not a libertarian. Don't call me that.
Oh, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I mean, I know that I'm a libertarian Marxist, and that that I don't know what anyone else is. So.
A libertarian.
But I saw you just writing Reason and stuff like that.
I have, but I'm not a libertarian. A lot of people write for Reason. They've even had socialists write for Reason. So this Stalinism thing, I really need to get back to this.
We had to go on a sidetrack there. I mean, I don't know. I might go up to level 3, get unlimited $9.49 yearly.
You should.
I don't know. No, I mean for you to pay for me.
Oh,
that sounds like
because I would learn.
Because I mean, we just had to like get you up to speed, I guess. But if you want to go back to Stalinism now, sure.
Oh, no, I definitely have not read all the works of philosophy that you have read. That is most certainly true. But we started out with Stalinism. That's where the conversation began, right? And
because you were saying that people shouldn't go to the gulag for psychically attacking the, you know, Stalinism's attempt to imminently save the spirit of his society, to preserve it for his people, and not let it get diluted by, your mass cultural garbage, right?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. Yeah, I prefer TV to the gulag. I mean, it's really that simple.
Okay, yeah, I know. I mean, I guess everyone, psychic criminals, would prefer watching TV to going to the gulag, but you don't have a choice in that in Stalin's world.
So, what do you do for fun?
This.
That's it, huh? And what is that? What you should be doing for fun? Also, is that what the communist citizens should be doing for fun too? Is intellectual work
exposing criminals, psychic criminals? Mm-hmm. I think that's the duty of every comrade.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I'm just curious. I'm not going to change my mind. I'm going to definitely prefer TV to the gulag forever, and so you're going to have to deal with me.
What TV shows do you like?
Most of them.
Like what? Is there movies you like?
Most of them. So what are you going to do with people?
Like, what does most of them mean?
Like a lot.
Which ones?
Like way too many for your society to accommodate. So what do you mean?
I say close down Hollywood. Close down Hollywood.
Oh, I'm sure.
Burn it.
Like by state force, or just like vigilante mobs, or what? Like revolutionary cadres?
I think that, you know, the state should definitely close Hollywood completely. Yeah, absolutely. That would be great.
Like the current state?
I mean, do you like Star Wars?
Should the current state shut down Hollywood?
Do you like Star Wars?
Like the United States government
I think that wouldn't be so bad. I mean,
Like
that
right
would definitely help a lot
Really?
if we could. Yes, I'd like that.
If Donald Trump, by executive order, just closed down Hollywood, who could close down Hollywood, that would be better for society.
Yes.
You want him to? Well, yeah, that is Stalinist of you. Yeah. Trump has some Stalinist tendencies, doesn't he? You must like some of him, don't you?
So, I mean, I'm just confused. Is that what is Hollywood producing that you think is good for humanity?
Good for humanity? No, I don't know. I have no idea what humanity wants or needs. How do you know?
Because I'm a defender of beauty and aesthetics, and I've used science to learn and determine things about these things.
Really?
And so I know, and I'm a member of the Revolutionary Vanguard Party, which takes care of the people.
Yeah, definitely. It always has, hasn't it? When it's not shooting them in the back, yeah.
Oh, you mean shooting psychic criminals or taking them to the gulag? I mean, we're just coming back to this argument: is that what do we do with you who just likes Hollywood?
Yeah, it's psychic.
You're a psychic criminal, so yeah, you
totally.
go to the gulag. But I don't know. Was there another point?
No, it's not. No, that's it. That's really it. I am definitely a psychic criminal, and I will remain one. And so I want to know. And I said to you, "What are you going to do with me?" And you said, "Well, you won't even exist. So how is that going to happen? Why will I not exist? Because you're going to remake human consciousness."
Yes.
Okay. How's that going to happen? Schools?
Dialectical materialism.
Just talking on podcasts about dialectical materialism, or you're going to have schools with children in them. That's the way to change culture, right? You have to get the kids.
I don't believe in school. I don't really believe in literacy for most people.
So you're like almost like a monarchist, Marxist, Stalinist, postmodernist.
I mean, you read Rousseau. What's Rousseau's perspective on literacy?
He's for it because he wants you to read the social contract. Don't you think?
I'm not sure about that.
I'm not sure, but I would think so. That's followed.
I'm pretty sure that in Emile he says that no one should be allowed to even learn how to read until they're at least 13, and that people should only read 3 books, and that people should only read Plutarch and Telemachus. And isn't that what he says?
No, I don't remember. I haven't read Emile since I was an undergraduate. I teach the social contract.
Okay, so you teach social contract, but you haven't read Julie or Emile.
Not in a while. Yeah, social contract is general.
Maybe you should refresh that.
Well, see, I do political philosophy, right?
Like what kind?
The kinds that are taught in universities, which I guess are deficient. That's what we read. That's what we read in the universities. We read the social contract. And in the English department, they read Emile and Julie. So.
Okay, why?
Why do they do that?
I don't understand the separation there.
Because the social contract, as I understand it, was far more influential in modern political history than the other books.
Okay, but there's no way to separate these things. Is that literature and philosophy are the same thing, and that both are science and both are art? Isn't that correct?
I'm not opposed to that. Yeah, no, I'm fine bringing in the literature. Sure, yeah, absolutely. Of course, it's relevant. I taught cultural studies at Barnard College. Yes, sir. Sure. I'm just explaining why I know the social contract and I don't know the other book.
Okay. I recommend going back to it. Julie's a great book.
Okay, but so, I mean, have you, let me ask you some questions. You've asked me a lot of questions about what I've read and haven't read. And, let me ask you some questions.
I mean,
so have you
haven't given any answers. You haven't said anything about any of the questions I've asked about what you actually like. So I don't know. You could also say something about that, maybe.
I did.
What you like in terms of TV, movies, anything like that. You were defending this, saying it's good for humanity.
Like you want the names of programs that I like?
Like anything. Like give me something here. I mean, I'm just wondering, what are we not closing Hollywood? What is Hollywood producing that is so valuable to you that you don't want them to be shut down?
It's sure. I don't know. You name it. Like Breaking Bad. I talk about that. Like, well, how about that? Do you want to start there? I mean, I could give you a list of 100 things I like that I'd rather not be shut down and censored.
Give me some. Give me just 10 or something. Just give me a few. Rattle them off. If you like them so much, you should be able to name some of them, right?
Is this because? I mean, I'd be happy to do that, but I want to know why. Are you going to then critique each show, or what?
I could. I mean, I could tell. I just want to know. I could then tell you my opinion if I knew what the things were. I'm asking you.
Okay, so
You're saying that we shouldn't shut down Hollywood. Because Hollywood
Not should.
is useful for humanity, produces good things that you like,
No.
that is valuable, right?
No. I didn't say any of that. Those are all universalistic claims. I don't do that. I'm just saying I like it, period. Me. That's the only person I'm speaking for here. Unlike you.
Why should we devote all these resources to producing Star Wars? I assume that you like Star Wars.
Do you get it all skittish about? Did you ever get it all skittish about speaking for all of humanity?
No, I'm a scientist. That's what we do.
Okay, yeah. So you right.
So I mean, Star Wars. This is what you like. So I mean, it's like how much is that actually? How much do those cost to make? Like $300 million.
I didn't mention
for your Star Wars, your precious Star Wars movie that you love.
I didn't
$300 million.
I didn't mention it.
Well, you're not naming anything. I assume that it's Star Wars. I'm just going to go with Star Wars.
But now,
so $300 million to make Star Wars.
Yes.
And that's considered. I've always been interested in this. Is that consider the man hours that go into making any of these movies, a Pixar movie, Star Wars movie, in terms of the computer animation, right? Let's assume that it's like, one calculation per second in human terms. In terms of man hours spent to animate a Pixar movie to render it, isn't that like 100 times more than the whole history of the universe? How can this be like a good use of resources to spend 100?
Because people want it.
Okay, so why should everyone get what they want all the time?
Well, it's because I'd rather not choose what they should want and stop them from getting what they want.
You don't have to choose. The scientists like me are going to choose.
Scientists. Do you like?
If you're not up to it,
you must be a fan of Sam Harris.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, well, he believes that scientists should basically rule.
He's not a scientist.
He wants scientists to. You think? Okay, you think.
What is his scientific credentials?
He has a PhD in neuroscience from UCLA. He's also an idiot. But do you think that scientists?
Okay, I'll take that. I'll take it from him. Because that's not real. Neuroscience is that's fake science.
I agree with you. Do you think that scientists should rule? Sounds like
hermeneutical scientists, yeah. Alchemic scientists, the scientists of New Atlantis, I think, yes.
New Atlantis?
Yeah, are you familiar with New Atlantis?
Definitely not.
You haven't read Francis Bacon, New Atlantis?
Oh.
One of the founding texts of science?
I see. So what about it? Tell me about it.
Is that produces the scientists who are going to determine what's good for you.
And you trust that. You trust that the scientists will know. Those scientists will
Do I trust New Atlantis to produce alchemical knowledge? Yes, I do. Do you know anything about the Rosicrucian order?
Why? Why do you trust it? What did it do for us?
Why do I trust the invisible college of alchemists of the Rosicrucian order who bring enlightenment throughout the world and who have studied, all the hermetic knowledge of human history and preserved it and carried it through into modern times?
They sound badass, man, but I don't understand any of that.
Okay, you don't know what the Rosicrucian order is?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, you only have 3 levels on your Renegade University.
I owe you a lot of
website.
money, clearly. Yeah. Clearly, I owe you a lot of money.
You could maybe put a 4th one on there. I don't know. Because the Rosicrucian order of the 17th century, are you familiar with the history of the 30 Years' War at all? You're a historian, right?
A U.S. historian, unfortunately. No, I'm not. I mean, a little bit schematically aware of it. But tell me.
Okay. I mean, do I have to explain European history to you? You only know American history.
Why don't we talk about Russian history in the 20th century? That's really what I wanted to ask you. So you've asked me a lot about my knowledge and what I've read.
Yeah, I explained all about it. But okay.
Have you read
Emperor of Dune?
Have you read 20th century Soviet history?
Yeah, I think I know. It's good. I've read God, Emperor of Dune. I already said that's the definitive text from what I'm aware.
You read who?
God, Emperor of Dune, the ultimate definitive text about Soviet history.
I see. Okay. The novel, the science fiction novel, is the history of the Soviet Union that you've read. So you don't know.
It's all right there in Frank Herbert's allegorical masterpiece, God, Emperor of Dune.
So you know nothing about the history of the Soviet Union, and this has all been trolling.
I know everything about the history of the Soviet Union. I've read God, Emperor of Dune.
Has this all been trolling? What is going on here? Just curious.
I mean, where's the problem? I've studied everything there is to know about it.
There's no problem. I'm just curious if you're just trolling.
I'm just, what do you, you haven't made an argument about anything.
It's all, as far as I can tell, it's all incoherent.
Okay, because you didn't study any of the actual material.
I did not study any of the important things. You're right. That has definitely been proven.
Okay. Yeah. You were watching Star Wars.
Exactly. I told you I love TV. I love TV. I was not reading fiction. I should have been reading fiction when I was watching Star Wars. That was my mistake.
So everything in the world, we should spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars and go to all this waste to produce Star Wars movies for you? And you're qualified to tell us yes because you haven't read anything.
I'm qualified to tell you what I like. That's all I'm telling you.
Okay. Why does that matter?
Oh, because you're going to have to deal with me when you take.
Okay, I'll put you in the gulag.
Yeah. Oh, we established that at the beginning.
Well, I don't understand what there is beyond that. I mean, I'm telling you what we're going to do. We're going to put you in the gulag. What's the next? What's the next thing after that?
No, that's it. Yeah, I'd probably suicide on my part. But so I'm just really curious. Like, what's the plan here? Like, how are you going to enact all this? What's the praxis? As the comrades used to say. Some of the comrades used to say. Like, how are you going to put this into practice? How are you going to expand your movement?
Invisible College of the Rosicrucian Order. Are you familiar with our founding father, Frater CRC, Christian Rosencreuz?
No. Sorry about that. You should talk.
Are you familiar with the Bohemian Uprising?
You should talk to a real intellectual sometime.
No, I only talk to pseudo-intellectuals because the intellectuals actually they don't know a whole lot, I guess.
That's clearly. No, I'm afraid I don't know much at all about any of this stuff. I don't know how to help you here. I thought we were going to talk about Stalinism and Marxism, but that.
We did. I don't think you can say a whole lot. You can go on. Do you have to? What do you want to say about it?
I think we're good. I think we're good for now.
Okay. So what? I'll get you my PayPal, and I think it's going to be $9.49 for this lecture. Okay.
That's the deal. Yeah, you're a good capitalist for Stalinist.
Marx was
You're right.
Investor as well.
That's right. Well, I guess I'll see you on the way to the gulag.
Okay. I'll be in party headquarters. And I'll probably deal with you personally or anything.
Which I'm sure of that.
We have people for that, good comrades.
I bet. I really do. Actually, I don't think.
Okay, take care, I guess.
Yeah.
Have a good one.